On the morning of September 8, 2019, Haley Rose woke up in her Portland apartment and reached for her phone. It was their ritual. Every morning while her older sister was out on a trip, there'd be a message, sometimes a photo, sometimes a voice note, sometimes just, "All good, signals crap, love you." But something always came through. That morning, the screen was empty. Haley checked the messenger. Megan's last message was from September 7th, 7:43 a.m. "Shot the sunset yesterday. Gonna try for the night sky today. It's insanely beautiful out here. I'll call when I'm back down." No reply to her "How are you?" from last night. She texted again, waited an hour, texted again. By noon, she started calling. Each call dropped after one ring. Could have meant nothing. Cell service out there was garbage. Megan had warned her about that. But the silence had stretched to 24 hours now, and something in Haley refused to write it off as dead zones. By evening, she called the Mono County Sheriff's Office in California. The dispatcher took down the info. Megan Rose, 29 years old, travel blogger from Portland, Oregon, left for a solo 3-day hike in Red Hollow Range National Forest on September 5th, was supposed to be back at her car by the evening of the 8th. Car, a silver 2016 Subaru Outback, left at the north entrance parking lot. Hasn't been in contact since the morning of September 7th. The dispatcher said they'd check the lot in the morning. No grounds for a search operation yet. Adult, experienced hiker, less than 48 hours. Haley hung up and didn't sleep until dawn. On the morning of September 9th, a deputy drove out to the north parking lot at Red Hollow Range. The silver Subaru was right where it should be, covered in a thin layer of dust, doors locked. On the back seat, a bag with clean clothes, a phone charger, an empty thermos. Everything pointed to an owner who planned to come back. That same day, Haley flew to California. The official search launched on September 10th. By then, Megan Rose had been out of contact for 3 days. Megan Elizabeth Rose was born March 14, 1990, in Eugene, Oregon. Moved to Portland after college, worked as a freelance photographer, spent the last 4 years running a travel blog and an Instagram account with about 70,000 followers. Specialized in landscape photography, the Pacific Northwest and California's mountain regions. Solo hikes were part of her brand. She wrote about it. "Nature only talks when you're alone. In a group, all you hear is the group." Over 5 years, she'd done more than 30 multi-day solo trips without a single serious incident. She knew how to read a map, set up camp, what to do if she ran into a bear, carried a satellite tracker, though she didn't always turn it on. "Ruins the feeling of freedom," she'd tell her sister. This time, the tracker stayed in the car. Haley learned that from the investigators. The sisters were close, despite the 5-year age gap. After their parents died in 2015, car crash on I-5, they only had each other. Haley worked as an accountant, lived a steady life, spent her vacations at home. Megan was the opposite, constant motion, new places, life in a tent and behind the wheel. But every night, wherever she was, a message would come. That was their deal. She never missed, Haley would later tell a local news station. Even when the signal was terrible, she'd find a way. Climb a hill, hunt for bars. One time she texted me at 3 in the morning because that's when she finally caught one bar. She knew I'd worry. She always knew. Red Hollow Range National Forest covers about 80 square miles on the eastern slopes of the Sierra Nevada. Officially part of the National Forest System, but way less popular than the neighboring parks. Rough terrain, steep rocky slopes, dense pine forest at mid-elevations, deep ravines cutting through the ridges. Elevation gain from the entrance to the high points, over 3,000 feet. Cell service is non-existent across most of it. Nearest tower is 14 miles east, and the signal only reaches a few exposed spots along the ridge. Night temps in early September drop to the mid-30s at elevation. Daytime hits the mid-60s. Weather shifts fast. A clear morning can turn to fog by noon. There are 4 official trails in Red Hollow. All marked, all require registration at the ranger station by the north entrance. But locals know other paths too. Old hunting trails, abandoned logging roads, approaches to cabins that shut down years ago. These routes aren't on any map and aren't maintained. People go missing in these mountains. Not often, but it happens. Ranger Daniel Ortega was on duty at the station on September 5th when Megan Rose registered her route. He remembered her. Young woman with a professional camera, confident, asked the right questions. She picked trail number 3, The Northwest Loop, 22 miles with 2 overnights, medium difficulty, moderate elevation gain. For an experienced hiker, Sunday a standard 3-day trip. She asked about good spots for night photography, Ortega recalled in his statement. I showed her a spot on the map where people usually shoot the Milky Way, an open ridge on the second leg of the route, about 8 miles from the start. She thanked me, bought a map, filled out the registration, looked like someone who knew what she was doing. On the registration card, Megan noted, departure date, September 5th, planned return, September 8th, route, Loop 3, emergency contact, Haley Rose's sister, phone number. Under special notes, she wrote, photographer may go off trail for shots. Ranger Ortega was the last person to see Megan Rose alive. Megan grew up in a small house on the outskirts of Eugene. Dad worked as a mechanic, Mom was a nurse. Money was enough to get by, not enough for extras. Family vacations meant campgrounds, cheaper than motels, and every summer the Roses would load up their old minivan with sleeping bags and head north to the lakes in Washington or south to the California coast. Megan was 6 when her dad first took her on a real trail. 3 miles up to a waterfall in the Cascades. She walked the whole way herself, turned down the offer to ride on his shoulders. That night by the fire, she said, "Can we go further tomorrow?" That became the pattern of their childhood. Megan, on the trail, moving, always heading somewhere. Haley, home, with a book, safe. The sisters didn't compete. They were just different. In high school, Megan joined the photography club. The club advisor handed her an old Pentax film camera and said, "Shoot something that makes me feel." She disappeared into the woods outside town for the weekend and came back with 36 frames of morning fog over the Willamette River. 3 of them were hung in the school hallway. After college, Megan moved to Portland. The city was a compromise, big enough for freelance work, close enough to the mountains for escape. The first 2 years, she scraped by, sold shots to stock agencies, took commercial gigs she hated. That covered rent. But every weekend she'd leave. Mount Hood, Columbia Gorge, the Pacific Coast. Her hard drive filled with terabytes nobody ever saw. In 2015, her world changed, twice. In March, their parents died in a car accident. A pickup with a driver who'd fallen asleep crossed into oncoming traffic on I-5. Death was instant. That's what the cops said, and the sisters chose to believe it. Megan didn't cry at the funeral. She stood next to Haley, held her hand, watched the 2 caskets with a face Haley couldn't read. Later, when everyone had left, she said, "I need to go." 3 days later, she was in Yosemite. A week later, the Mojave Desert. A month later, the Rocky Mountains of Montana. She wasn't running from grief. She was searching for something, or hiding. Haley never figured out which. The second change came that fall. Megan started an Instagram. The account was called @MeganRoams. First post, October 12, 2015. A shot of sunrise over Crater Lake. Caption, "Starting over, who's with me?" First month, 300 followers. Nothing special, but Megan was consistent. 3 posts a week, always with a story. Where it was shot, how she got there, what she felt. Her captions hooked you. She wrote like she was talking to a friend over coffee. 4 hours on a dirt road, last hour on foot, my knees hate me. But look at this light, look at it, knees can wait. Night alone in a tent, people ask if I'm scared. I am, every time, but fear isn't a reason not to do something. Fear is part of doing it. By summer 2016, she had 10,000 followers. By the end of 2017, 30,000. Brands started reaching out. She turned down most offers, only accepted what she actually used. By summer 2019, 70,000 followers, contracts with 2 major outdoor brands, an invitation to become an ambassador for a Sony camera line. She turned down the last one. Too many obligations, she explained. By the morning of September 10th, 18 people had gathered at the Mono County Sheriff's Office. Search and rescue personnel, volunteers from the local SAR chapter, 2 handlers with dogs trained for human tracking. Sergeant Ray Hollister ran the operation, 23 years on the job, veteran of mountain searches. Haley stood by the steps. They wouldn't let her join, but she refused to leave. For the next 2 weeks, she'd live in a motel 12 miles from the forest, showing up at the sheriff's office every morning, waiting for news every night. Sergeant Hollister mapped out the search zone, the entire Trail 3, plus a 1-mile buffer on each side. 80 square miles. 2 dog teams would start from the parking lot and work the trail in both directions. A helicopter would go up at noon once the morning fog cleared. The first find came at 2:20 p.m. that day. Megan Rose's tent was set up at the designated campsite, 8.3 miles from the north entrance, exactly where Ranger Ortega had suggested for night photography. One-person tent, dark green, MSR brand, zipper closed from the inside. Sleeping bag, rolled out but not unzipped. Backpack, 2 days worth of food. Water bottle 1/3 full. Change of clothes. Headlamp, no jacket, no fleece, no phone, no camera. Tracks around the tent had been washed out by rain on September 8th, but the dog picked up a scent. It led from the tent northwest, away from the trail, toward untouched forest. 400 meters later, the trail went cold on a rocky slope. On September 6th at 8:17 a.m., Haley Rose in Portland received a message from her sister. Camped at mile 6, cold but fine, heading to the photo spot today. Light is insane, already shot sunrise. Love you. Attached was a photo, fog in the valley, lit by the first rays of sun, silhouettes of pines in the foreground. Haley replied, "Beautiful, stay safe." Megan sent back a heart emoji. At 7:52 p.m. came one more message. Made it to the spot, setting up camp. Ridge is amazing. Gonna shoot tonight if it doesn't cloud over. Signal's garbage, writing while I've got it. I'll reply in the morning. Haley responded, "Okay, good luck with the sky. Text me when you wake up." The message was delivered. Megan never read it. September 7th began for Haley with an empty screen. She woke at 7:15, same as always, and immediately checked her phone. No messages. She waited. Megan might have slept in if she'd been shooting late. At 8:30, she texted, "How is the sky? Get any good shots?" The message went through but wasn't delivered. Gray checkmark instead of blue. At 9:00, another message. "Text me when you're up," not delivered. At 10:00, tried calling. Call dropped after 1 ring. That was normal for the mountains and Haley knew it. But something nagged at her. At 11:30, she wrote, "Meg, you're scaring me. Text me something." At 2:00 p.m., "Please." At 4:00 p.m., "I'm seriously worried. Get in touch any way you can." None of the messages delivered. None got a reply. That evening, Haley started calling everyone she could think of. The ranger on duty at the station checked the registration log and confirmed. Megan Rose had started trail number 3 on September 5th, planned return September 8th. She hadn't missed her deadline yet. "Wait until tomorrow," the ranger told her. "If she's not back to her car by evening on the 8th, then we start looking. People get delayed in the mountains all the time. It's normal." Haley didn't sleep that night. She sat with her phone in her hands, staring at the screen. What happened the night of September 6th to 7th, the investigation never established with certainty. Known, Megan set up camp at site number 7. Her tent, backpack, sleeping bag, food supply, all found on site. Evidence suggested she'd cooked dinner on a camp stove. She'd rolled out her sleeping bag but hadn't climbed into it. It lay spread out but zipped closed. Known, she left the tent at night. Boot prints, her size, her tread pattern, led from the tent northwest toward an unmarked slope. She took her camera. Didn't take her jacket, didn't take her fleece, didn't take her headlamp. Known, temperature that night dropped to 32 degrees. In a thin long-sleeve shirt, the only clothing she had on when they found the body, hypothermia could set in within hours. Why did she leave? What made her walk out of camp without warm clothes in the middle of the night? The only clue lay on her camera's memory card, but they had to reach the camera first. The search continued for 9 days. Teams swept section after section, expanding the search zone in concentric circles. They checked every point marked on the map: campsites, water sources, hunting cabins, overlooks. They checked unmarked trails local hunters told them about. The helicopter went up every day the weather allowed. By the end of the first week, the area surveyed covered over 100 square miles. 47 people participated, a record for Mono County in the past decade. 3 dogs, 2 helicopters, a drone with thermal imaging. Megan Rose was not found. On September 16th, a detective from Mono County came to see Haley at the motel. Carmen Vasquez, 42 years old, 12 years on the force. She'd been running an investigation parallel to the search operation. "I'd like to ask you a few questions," she told Haley. "Standard procedure." Haley sat on the edge of the bed, pale, gaunt. The motel room was small. Bed, desk, TV, a window overlooking the parking lot. Haley hadn't turned on the TV once the whole time. Vasquez asked about enemies, ex-partners, financial problems. Haley answered everything. "Do you think this was a crime? Someone attacked her?" Vasquez paused. "At this time, we have no evidence of that. Her belongings are untouched, no signs of struggle, valuables in place. Official theory is accident, but we're checking everything." On September 18th, Vasquez called with news. "We've cleared Jason Pierce," she said, Megan's ex-boyfriend. "He was in Portland all week. Witnesses, camera footage, card transactions. It's not him." "I knew," Haley replied. "We also checked other men she'd been in contact with online. Her Instagram DMs, email correspondence, nothing suspicious." "So what now?" "Now we wait. If something new turns up, we continue. If not..." She didn't finish the sentence. By September 20th, hope began to fade. 13 days had passed since Megan last made contact. Night temperatures were dropping. Without shelter, without warm clothes, survival was statistically impossible. On September 14th, Sergeant Hollister convened a meeting with county leadership. "We've exhausted standard protocols," he said. "Territory's been surveyed, tracks lead nowhere. I recommend scaling back to maintenance mode, rotating crews, periodic flyovers, monitoring." That evening, Hollister drove personally to the motel where Haley was staying. "We're not stopping," he said. "We're scaling back, standard procedure. If new information comes in, we ramp back up to full strength. But I have to be honest with you, the chances of finding her alive at this point are minimal." Haley stared at him in silence. "She's out there," she said finally. "Somewhere out there. I know she's there." Hollister didn't argue. On September 22nd, the first snow fell. Not down in the valley where Haley's motel was, still warm there, but up high on the ridges of Red Hollow Range where Megan had made her last camp. A white blanket covered the rocks and trees. The snow was light and melted by noon. But it was a sign. Winter was coming. Hollister called Haley that night. "Snow is bad," he said bluntly. "If a real snowstorm hits, we'll have to suspend the search until spring." "Until spring," Haley repeated in a flat voice. "Hopefully it won't come to that, but I want you to be prepared." On September 25th, the 18th day after Megan Rose's disappearance, a man named Wayne Carpenter called the Mono County Sheriff's Office. Carpenter was 57. He lived in the town of Ravine, 30 miles from Red Hollow Range, and had been hunting these mountains since he was 12. He knew every ravine, every trail, every animal den. When he heard about the missing woman on local radio, he decided to help, his own way. "I don't like outsiders in my woods," he'd later tell journalists, "but a girl went missing. That's not right." On the morning of the 25th, Carpenter left home before dawn. He didn't coordinate with the search team, just grabbed his rifle, a pack with supplies, and headed into the forest. He knew places the rescuers hadn't reached, hidden gullies, game trails, old paths so overgrown you couldn't see them from 10 feet away. By noon, he'd descended into the ravine northwest of Campsite 7, the same one the rescue teams had swept 2 weeks earlier. But Carpenter didn't walk along the bottom of the ravine by the creek. He walked higher, along the slope, where rocky terraces alternated with dense brush. The rescuers hadn't been here. Too steep a climb, too much risk for untrained volunteers. At 2:35 p.m., Carpenter spotted something on the slope about 100 yards below his position. Something that didn't fit the natural picture of the forest. He moved closer. Then he pulled out his phone, no signal, and started climbing back up. He needed to find a spot where he could make a call. At 3:47 p.m., he got through to the sheriff's office. "Found her," he said. "She's dead." Wayne Carpenter waited on the ridge where he'd gotten a signal. He didn't go back down to the body, knew you weren't supposed to disturb the scene. The first team arrived 2 hours later. Sergeant Hollister, Detective Vasquez, 2 crime scene techs, a photographer. Carpenter led them down. The descent took 40 minutes. The slope was about 35 degrees, steeper in places. They had to grab roots, step over boulders, push through brush. "Right there," Carpenter finally said, pointing down. "See? Between those two pines." Hollister raised his binoculars. At first, all he saw was rocks, bushes, fallen needles. Then his gaze caught on something wrong. Outlines that didn't belong to the forest. "I see it," he said. They descended another 50 meters. The body lay in a shallow depression between two granite outcrops. Woman on her back, arms at her sides, legs slightly bent at the knees. Clothing, dark hiking pants, gray long-sleeve shirt, boots, no outer layer, no jacket, no fleece, no hat. The body was partially covered. Branches, rocks, fallen needles, not fully hidden, but enough that it wouldn't be spotted from the air or from a distance. Hollister noted this. Accident or deliberate? Crime scene tech Lisa Thornton began her examination. State of the body. Early decomposition, she said, consistent with approximately 2 to 3 weeks in these conditions. No visible trauma on exposed areas. Body position doesn't indicate a fall from height. Limbs not deformed. No obvious fractures. She circled the body along the perimeter. Branches and rocks on top of the body. Character of the covering. Indeterminate. Could be natural, could be artificial. Requires further analysis. Hollister looked at the woman's face. 18 days in the mountains had changed her, but he could recognize the features from the photos. Megan Rose, 29 years old, sister. 6 meters from the body at the base of a pine tree, they made the first major find. A camera. Sony A7R3, the professional full-frame camera Megan used for landscape work. The camera lay lens down, partially covered in needles. Case was intact. Megan's backpack had stayed in the tent 1.5 miles away and 800 feet higher up the slope. She'd taken only the camera and come here. Why? 12 meters from the body, further down the slope, they found a phone. iPhone in a protective case, screen cracked, battery was dead. Nothing else was found. No jacket, no fleece, no headlamp, no note, no indication of what happened. Just a body, a camera, and a phone. Hollister called Haley from the car on the road back to town. "We found her," he said without preamble. Silence on the line. Then Haley's voice, hoarse, broken. "Is she... I'm very sorry." Long pause. Hollister heard her breathing, short, ragged gasps. "Where?" she finally asked. "In a ravine, northwest of her camp, about 1.5 miles. Local hunter found her." What happened to her?" "Don't know yet. Autopsy will tell us, but no visible signs of violence." "When can I..." Haley's voice cracked. "When can I see her?" "We'll recover the body tomorrow. Then autopsy, that'll take a day or two. After that, yes, I'll call when you can." Haley hung up without saying goodbye. Hollister didn't take offense. He'd heard that sound too many times. The sound of a person learning there was no more hope. On September 27th, Dr. Alice Chan performed a full autopsy on Megan Rose. Official cause of death, hypothermia, compounded by exhaustion and dehydration. In plain terms, she froze to death. Temperature the night of September 6th to 7th, if that was the night Megan left camp, dropped to 32 degrees Fahrenheit. In a thin long-sleeve shirt, without a jacket, without moving, hypothermia sets in within hours. First shivering, then confusion, then loss of coordination. In the final stages, paradoxical undressing. The person feels hot, takes off clothes, then loss of consciousness and death. But Megan hadn't undressed. The clothing they found her in was intact. That meant she died before the hypothermia reached its final stage. Or something else prevented her from undressing. Toxicology. Clean. No drugs, alcohol, or toxic substances. Injuries. Minimal. Scrapes on palms and knees, probably from falls while descending the slope. No fractures, no signs of assault, no head trauma. Dr. Chan wrote in her report, death resulted from hypothermia and exhaustion, likely within 6 to 12 hours of leaving shelter. Circumstances that led to the victim being found at the discovery location remain unclear. Detective Carmen Vasquez studied the coroner's report in her office. Unclear, she repeated aloud. She spread out everything she had on the case. Map marked with camp location and body discovery site. Photos, statements from Ranger Ortega Wayne Carpenter, printout of messages between Megan and Haley. Everything pointed to accident. Woman left camp at night, got lost, froze, died. It happened in the mountains, more often than people thought. But something didn't add up. Why did she leave without a jacket? At night, below freezing? Megan was an experienced hiker. She knew the danger of hypothermia. She wouldn't have walked into the night without gear unless she had good reason. Why didn't she take the headlamp? It was sitting in the backpack, working. Walking down a mountain slope at night without light is suicide. Megan understood that. Why did she end up 1.5 miles from camp, in a hard-to-reach spot with no trails? If she'd gotten lost, she'd have been looking for the way back. Instead, she went further, down, into the depths of the ravine. And the main question, what made her leave? The answer might be on the camera or the phone. On September 28th at 9:15 a.m., Detective Vasquez inserted the memory card from Megan Rose's camera into her work computer. Next to her sat digital forensics analyst Marcus Lee. The card was standard. SanDisk Extreme Pro, 128 gigabytes, file system undamaged, data readable. The camera had lain in the forest for 18 days, but the waterproof case had done its job. The card held 847 files, raw photos, a few videos, camera technical data. Lee started sorting by creation date. First shots were dated September 5th, the day Megan left Portland. Roadside cafe on I-5, sunset over mountains, the parking lot at Red Hollow entrance. September 6th, more photos. Morning fog in the valley, the same shots she'd posted to Instagram. Then, trail, trees, rocky outcrops, campsite with tent in background, sunset over the ridge. The last series of shots from September 6th was taken between 7:30 and 8:15 p.m. Twilight fading to night, first stars over tree silhouettes, then a gap of several hours. Here, Lee said, pointing at the screen, night shooting, starts at 10:14 p.m. The shots taken between 10:14 p.m. and 1:47 a.m. on September 7th were different from everything else on the memory card. Megan had shot at night before. The card had photos of starry skies from previous trips. She knew how to set up the camera for long exposures, how to avoid blur. These shots were taken professionally, but what she shot that night wasn't stars. First shot, 10:14 p.m. Forest. Trees lit by moon, which was nearly full that night. Darkness between the trunks, nothing unusual. Second shot, 10:17 p.m., same angle, but camera shifted slightly right, as if the photographer had turned following something. Third shot, 10:23 p.m., different angle. Megan had clearly moved several dozen meters from the previous spot. In the frame, a gap between trees sloped descending into darkness. She was moving, Vasquez noted. Wasn't standing still. Fourth shot, 10:31 p.m. Here there was something else. In the photo, between two pines about 40 or 50 meters from the camera, was a spot of light, small, blurred, pale bluish in tone. Didn't look like the moon, which was shining from the other side. Didn't look like a flashlight, too diffuse, too shapeless. Vasquez leaned toward the screen. What is that? Lee zoomed in. The spot got bigger but no clearer. Edges blurred, center brighter than the periphery. The light source was clearly between the trees, at ground level, or slightly above. Can't say, Lee answered. Could be a sensor artifact, could be moonlight reflecting off something. Wet rock, water surface, or something was actually glowing out there. The following shots told a story without words. 10:38 p.m. Glow closer, or Megan had moved toward it. The spot of light took up more of the frame, still blurred, still incomprehensible. 10:45 p.m. Closer still. Trees at the edges of the frame had changed. Megan had moved significantly, descending the slope. 10:52 p.m. Glow in the center of frame, but image quality worse. Camera had shaken, image blurred, as if the photographer was rushing or lost her footing. 11:01 p.m. Darkness, no glow, just trees, rocks, night forest. 11:07 p.m. Light again, but now it was to the right, as if it had moved, or Megan had turned the wrong way and was now correcting course. 11:15, 11:23, 11:34 p.m. A series of shots where the glow appeared and disappeared. Megan kept moving, following it. Each frame, a new position, new angle, new spot on the slope. She was chasing it, Vasquez said, whatever it was. Lee silently opened file after file. 11:48 p.m. Glow brighter than in any previous shot. Megan was very close, but the photo was blurred again, hands shaking, where she was walking while shooting. 12:02 a.m. Black frame. Nothing. Either the light vanished or the camera couldn't capture it. 12:14 a.m. Faint glow in the distance between trees. Moved away again. 12:27 a.m. Darkness. 12:41 a.m. Light. Closer. 12:58 a.m. Light. Closer still. The last shots were taken between 1:12 and 1:47 a.m. 1:12 a.m. Blurred frame, almost entirely white. Overexposure, as if the light source had gotten too close to the lens. 1:23 a.m. Dark silhouette against diffused glow. Tree, rock, figure, impossible to tell. 1:31 a.m. Ground, rocks, needles, fallen branches. Camera pointed down as if Megan had stumbled or fallen. 1:39 a.m. Sky between tree canopy. Stars, a band of Milky Way. Camera pointed up. Photo sharp, well focused. 1:47 a.m. The last shot. Dark, almost nothing visible. You could barely make out the outline of rocks and something pale in the lower right corner. Zoomed in, the pale spot turned out to be a hand, a human hand in a gray sleeve lying on the ground. Megan had photographed her own hand, or the camera had fired on its own when it fell. After that, there were no more photos. Vasquez and Lee sat in silence, staring at the last frame. "Almost 3 hours," Vasquez finally said. "She spent 3 hours walking through the forest at night, following that light. No jacket, no flashlight, going lower and lower down the slope. And then she stopped. Or couldn't go any further." Lee scrolled back through the shots, stopped on one where the glow was most visible. "I can run this through analysis," he said. "Check the spectrum, compare to known light sources, but I'm warning you, I'm not an expert on optical anomalies." Megan's phone was unlocked the next day. Battery was dead, but the county lab connected the device to external power and extracted the data. Last activity, September 7th, 7:43 a.m., outgoing message to her sister. After that, nothing. "Battery died around noon," the lab tech said. "The phone was searching for signal all night and morning. That drains the battery fast." "So if she tried to call later, she couldn't?" "Right. The phone was dead long before she died. GPS data from the phone was fragmentary. Last recorded point, September 7th, 6:58 a.m., coordinates matching campsite 7. After that, nothing. The phone hadn't recorded Megan's nighttime journey down the slope. The camera was the only witness. On September 30th, Vasquez compiled a preliminary report, facts. Megan Rose, 29, began a 3-day route in Red Hollow Range on September 5th, 2019. On September 6th, she set up camp at site number 7. The night of September 6th to 7th, she left camp without outer clothing or flashlight, taking only her camera and phone. She moved northwest, down the slope, away from the trail. After approximately 3 to 4 hours, she stopped moving in a depression between rocks, about 1.4 miles from camp and 800 feet lower in elevation. There, she died of hypothermia and exhaustion. Unanswered questions. What prompted her to leave? What she was following based on the photos? Why she didn't take warm clothes or a flashlight? Why she didn't return to camp? Recommendation. Close case as accidental death with notation of undetermined circumstances. Vasquez added a final paragraph. Photos on the victim's camera captured an unidentified light source in the forest, which the victim apparently followed. The nature of this source has not been established. Image analysis revealed no known optical artifacts or camera malfunctions. Possible explanations: reflection of moonlight, bioluminescence, presence of an unidentified third party with a light source. The last theory is unconfirmed. No evidence of other people's presence at the body discovery site was found. On October 1st, opening day of hunting season in Red Hollow Range, the Mono County Prosecutor's Office made its decision. The Megan Rose case was classified as death by accidental causes. Criminal investigation closed for lack of evidence of a crime. Body released to family for burial. Haley didn't look at the photos from the camera. Vasquez offered to show them. Haley refused. "I don't want to know," she said. "Not now. Maybe later. Not now." She signed the paperwork, took her sister's belongings, and left. The funeral was held October 5th in Portland. Over 200 people came. friends, colleagues, followers who knew Megan only from photos online. Haley stood by the casket and didn't cry. She looked at her sister's face and thought about the glow in the night forest. What did she see? What made her leave? There were no answers. The camera sat in a box with Megan's things for 3 months. Haley brought it to Portland along with the rest. Backpack, tent, clothes. She put it all in her apartment closet, closed the door, and tried not to think about it. She went back to work, resumed routine, answered colleagues' questions in monosyllables. Yes, they found her. No, an accident. Thanks, I'm managing. She wasn't managing. At night, she lay awake thinking about her sister, about the last messages she hadn't read in time, about the tracker that stayed in the car. Thoughts went in circles, leading nowhere. In December, a week before Christmas, she finally opened the closet. The box sat on the top shelf. Haley pulled it down, stared at it for a long time, then ripped the tape. The smell hit first. Forest, pine, something else. Faint, almost faded. That's how Megan smelled when she came back from trips. Haley closed her eyes and for a second let herself believe her sister was about to walk through the door, toss her pack in the corner, say, "God, I missed a hot shower so much." The second passed. Megan didn't walk in. Haley sorted through the belongings, shirts, fold, first aid kit, keep, camera. She picked it up. Sony A7R III. Heavy, professional, cost more than Haley's monthly salary. Megan had saved for it for 6 months. Haley turned the camera over, found the memory card slot. Card was in place. Police had returned it along with everything else. Detective Vasquez had offered to show her the photos. Back then, she refused. Now she inserted the card into her laptop. 847 files. She started from the beginning. September 5th. Cafe on the highway, sunset, parking lot. She recognized her sister's style. September 6th. Trail, forest, camp. Photos Megan had posted to Instagram. Now she was looking at the originals in full resolution and understood why people followed her sister's blog. It wasn't just pretty. It was alive. She reached the evening shots. Sunset, twilight, first stars. Then a gap. Then 10:14 p.m. Haley stared at the first night photo for a long time. Forest lit by moon. Nothing unusual at first glance. When she reached the 4th frame, the one where the glow first appeared, she stopped. Spot of light between pines, pale, blurred, bluish. Not the moon. The moon was on the other side, not a flashlight, too diffuse, too large. Something else. Haley zoomed in. The spot got bigger but no clearer. Shape was undefined. She thought, maybe a reflection? Wet rock, puddle? But Megan had been moving toward this light, shot after shot, getting closer. 3 hours, by the timestamps. 3 hours she'd followed this light, descending the slope, going further and further from camp. Why? Haley knew her sister. Megan wasn't the type to lose her head. She was rational, careful, experienced. If she saw something in the forest, she'd have thought about what it was first. She wouldn't have followed some random light into the night without a jacket, without a flashlight, unless the light looked like something familiar, something that made sense, something worth following. Haley went through all the night shots, 43 photos over 3 hours. The glow appeared and vanished, approached and receded, as if playing some game with Megan, or leading her somewhere. On the 1:23 a.m. shot, she noticed something new, a dark silhouette against the glow. At first glance, she'd taken it for a tree. Now, looking closer, she wasn't sure. The silhouette was too even for a tree, too symmetrical. The outline resembled a person? Haley zoomed to maximum. Quality degraded, pixels blurred, but the shape remained. Maybe a head, maybe shoulders, maybe nothing. A trick of light and shadow. At 2 in the morning, she sat on the kitchen floor, surrounded by photos, trying to understand what her sister had seen in her last hours of life. The next day, Haley called Detective Vasquez. "I looked at the photos," she said. "What was it? That light?" "We couldn't determine. Analysis came up empty. Official position, unidentified light source." "And unofficially?" Vasquez was quiet. "Unofficially, I don't know. I've seen a lot of weird things in 12 years on the job, things that don't fit in reports. This case is one of them." "Why did she follow it? She wasn't stupid. She knew you don't leave camp at night." The only explanation that makes sense, she thought she knew what it was. Something that seemed safe to her, or interesting, or important. Like what? A rare natural phenomenon she wanted to photograph? A person who needed help? I can only guess. In January 2020, Haley hired an independent expert, Dr. Rachel Morgan from Stanford, who studied optical phenomena and digital forensics. Haley paid her $3,000 for a full analysis of the night photos. The report came back 3 weeks later. Dr. Morgan was definitive about one thing. The glow in the photos was not a camera artifact. Sensor was functioning properly. Lens had no defects. Files hadn't been altered. What Megan captured was a real light source that existed at the moment of shooting. Beyond that, the questions began. Spectral analysis showed the glow didn't match any known artificial source. Not a flashlight, not a headlight, not a phone screen. Color temperature was unusual, around 7,000, 8,000 Kelvin, cooler than ordinary lamps, closer to starlight. Bioluminescence is theoretically possible, Morgan wrote. Some fungi glow in the dark, but the intensity significantly exceeds anything known for bioluminescent organisms in North America. Additionally, bioluminescence is static. It doesn't move the way the light source does in these shots. The report's conclusion was vague. The nature of the light source cannot be definitively determined from available data. Haley didn't pursue additional specialists. She understood there would be no answer. Whatever Megan had seen that night, it defied explanation. In February, on the anniversary of Megan's birthday, Haley drove to Red Hollow Range for the first time. She parked in the same lot where her sister's Subaru had sat. At the ranger station, a young guy was on duty. He recognized the name Rose. "I want to hike up to the campsite where she stayed. Number 7. Is that possible?" The ranger looked her over. "It's 8 miles one way. Elevation gain, over 2,000 feet. In February, it gets dark at 5. You won't make it alone." He offered a compromise. A volunteer would accompany her. The volunteer's name was Tom, a gray-haired man in his 60s, former firefighter who'd participated in the search for Megan. "You were there every day," he said. "At the sheriff's office. I remember you." They hit the trail at 9 in the morning. The forest was quiet, almost soundless, just the crunch of needles under boots. They reached campsite 7 by 3 in the afternoon. Megan's tent was long gone, but the spot was recognizable. Big boulder, sheltered site, view of the valley. Haley stood where her sister had stood on her last evening. Looked at the mountains, the forest falling away down the slope. Somewhere out there, 1.5 miles to the northwest, was the spot where they'd found Megan's body. "Want to go down there?" Tom asked. Haley shook her head. "No, not today. Maybe never." Then she noticed the flowers, a small bouquet already dried at the base of the boulder. Beside them, a laminated card with a photo of Megan and a handwritten note. "We remember you. Rest in peace." "Someone came here," Haley said. "Followers, probably. Her story was well known. That's how they cope." On the way back, Tom said, "I don't believe in the supernatural. 30 years fighting fires, 15 searching for people in the mountains, seen a lot of death. All of it had an explanation, no mysticism. But sometimes something happens that doesn't fit. A person survives where they shouldn't have, or dies where they shouldn't have, or does something they shouldn't have done. And you look at it and think, why? What do you think about my sister?" Tom was quiet for a long time. "I think she saw something. Something real. Not a hallucination, not a trick of the eye. Something that was there in the forest. And she followed it because that's how she lived. She went where others didn't go, shot what others didn't see. That's what killed her." He paused. "I'm sorry I can't tell you what it was. No one can. Maybe that's for the best. Some things are better not knowing." The first anniversary of Megan's death passed quietly. Haley didn't go back to California. She held a small memorial in Portland, dinner with friends who'd known Megan. They looked at photos, told stories, cried a little. Then they all went home, and Haley sat alone in her apartment, looking at the wall where Megan's photo hung. She'd posted something to Megan's Instagram that morning, The first post since the funeral. A photo from their childhood. Two sisters on a beach, holding hands, looking at the ocean. Caption: 1 year. Still can't believe you're gone. Still waiting for a text. Miss you every day. The post got 23,000 likes, thousands of comments, strangers writing "rest in peace," others writing "we'll never forget." A few writing conspiracy theories that Haley deleted without reading. The investigation was officially closed. Detective Vasquez had moved to another county. The case files sat in some archive, gathering dust. But Vasquez had left Haley with her personal number. "If anything comes up," she'd said at their last meeting, "anything at all, even if it seems crazy, call me." Haley never called. What was there to say? The case was closed. Accident, hypothermia, undetermined circumstances. The official story had been written, stamped, filed away. But Vasquez had also said something else, off the record. "I've worked in these mountains for 12 years. This isn't the first time someone's gotten lost, not the first time someone's died, but it's the first time I couldn't figure out why. That bothers me. I'll keep thinking about it." Haley kept thinking about it too, every night. But online, the story continued to spread. True crime blogs picked up the case. Podcasts dissected the evidence. Theories multiplied. Serial killer, foul play, cult activity. Some amateur investigators claimed they'd found new evidence, usually garbage. The strangest theories involved the light. Alien encounter, some wrote. Ball lightning, suggested others. Government experiment, portal to another dimension, spirit of someone who died in these mountains. Haley stopped reading comments. She didn't need strangers' theories. She had her own truth, and it was simple. Her sister saw something in the night forest, followed it, and died. Why she followed, that was the question, and there would never be an answer. Ranger Daniel Ortega continued working at the Red Hollow Range Station. In an interview with the local paper, he said, "I showed her the spot on the map for night photography. I told her it was beautiful there. I didn't tell her it was dangerous. Maybe I should have." "What do you mean?" "Nothing specific, just that area was always strange. Compasses sometimes lie. GPS loses signal more often than other places. People tell stories about light in the forest, sounds, the feeling of being watched. I don't believe in ghosts, but I believe there are places better left alone." He added that in the year since Megan's death, nobody had camped at site number 7. Hikers chose other spots for the night, as if they knew, as if they felt it. The second anniversary passed, then the third, then the fourth. Each year, Haley did the same thing, posted a photo of Megan to her Instagram account, wrote a few words, watched the comments roll in. Each year, the comments got fewer. The world was moving on. By 2023, the podcasts had stopped calling. The true crime bloggers had found new cases. The #FindMegan hashtag was dead. Only the most dedicated followers still visited Megan's page, leaving occasional comments under her old posts. "Still thinking about you." Still wondering what happened. Haley wondered too, but wondering didn't bring answers. Wondering just brought more questions, more sleepless nights, more moments when she'd see something. A light in the distance, a movement in the dark, and think of her sister. She went to therapy. It helped a little. The therapist said grief was like a wave. Sometimes it receded, sometimes it crashed over you. You couldn't control it. You could only learn to ride it. Haley learned to ride it, most days. Wayne Carpenter, the hunter who found Megan's body, died in March 2022. Heart attack, 70 years old. Before he died, he gave an interview to a podcast about unsolved cases. "I found her by accident," Carpenter said. "Wasn't looking for her. Just walking through the forest, like I'd done 1,000 times. And I saw something that didn't fit. Walked closer, and there she was, lying between the rocks like she'd laid down to rest." The host asked about the light, about the photos on the camera. "I didn't see the photos, but I've seen the light out there, more than once. Locals all have. We don't talk about it with outsiders because, well, who'd believe us? But among ourselves, yeah, everyone knows." "What do you think it is?" Long pause. "I don't know. Honestly, I don't. Maybe some natural phenomenon science hasn't explained yet. Maybe something from the ground, gas, radiation, or maybe there are things that don't need explaining, that just are. And it's better to stay away from them." By the 5th anniversary of Megan's death, September 2024, The story had mostly faded. Articles had sunk to the back pages of search results. The hashtag #FindMegan hadn't been updated in years. The world had moved on. Megan's Instagram account still existed, 152,000 followers. People would occasionally stop by, look at old photos, leave comments. Haley replied less and less. She'd moved from Portland. New city, new job, new life. She'd told herself it was for practical reasons, better opportunity, change of scenery. But really, she knew. She couldn't stay in the apartment where Megan had crashed on the couch so many times. Couldn't walk past the coffee shop where they'd had their last breakfast together. Couldn't look at Mount Hood on the horizon without thinking of all the times Megan had disappeared into those mountains and come back. In the new city, nobody knew about her sister. Nobody asked questions. Nobody looked at her with that expression, the one that said, "I know what happened to you." She tried not to think about Megan, not because she wanted to forget, but because remembering hurt too much. On the wall of her new apartment hung one photo, Megan on a mountaintop, pack on her shoulders, wind in her hair. She was looking at the camera and smiling, that wide, open smile Haley remembered from childhood. Below the photo was an inscription in Megan's handwriting. "Best day. Want more." In November 2024, Haley got an email from a stranger. Subject: Your sister. "My name is Alex Nguyen. I'm a scientist researching atmospheric optical phenomena at the University of California. I've studied the photographs your sister took and conducted my own investigation of the Red Hollow Range area. I can't explain what she captured, but I can tell you it wasn't a hallucination, an artifact, or a fake." The light source in her photos was real, and based on the spectral characteristics, it doesn't match any known natural or artificial source. "I'd like to talk to you, not for publication, not for research, just to talk. I think you deserve to know the little I've found. If you want to, write back. If not, I understand." Haley read the email 3 times. Then she closed the laptop and went to the kitchen, made herself tea, stood by the window, looking at the street. She thought about Megan, about the light in the forest, about questions that had no answers. Then she went back to the computer and started typing a reply. What happened to Megan Rose on the night of September 7, 2019, is not definitively known. The official version: she left her camp, got disoriented, froze to death. An accident, a tragedy, like so many others. The photos on her camera tell a different story, a story about a light that appeared in the night forest and a woman who followed it. For 3 hours she descended the slope, moving away from safety towards something that defies explanation. What was it? A natural phenomenon science hasn't described yet? An optical illusion created by moonlight and fog? The presence of someone, or something, in the night forest? There's no answer. Maybe there never will be. The place where they found Megan's body still exists. Hikers avoid the area, not because of restrictions, not because of danger, but because of something else. Something felt, but not named. The locals of Red Hollow Range know the stories. Light in the forest that appears and vanishes. Sounds that shouldn't be there. The feeling of eyes watching from the darkness. They don't tell outsiders about it. Not because they're scared, because they know they won't be believed. Megan Rose believed, or at least she went to look. That's what killed her. Haley sometimes thinks about what her sister saw in her final moments. Did she lie on the cold rocks, looking at the sky, seeing stars? Or was the light she'd been following right there, close, almost within arm's reach? She doesn't know. Nobody knows. The last photo on Megan's camera, a blurred dark frame where you can barely make out a hand in a gray sleeve. Her hand lying on the ground. The camera either fell beside her, or Megan managed one last shot on purpose, leaving a message nobody could decode. And that's where the story ends. Not with a period, with an ellipsis. Red Hollow Range Forest still stands where it always has. The trails lead up to the campsites, to the viewpoints overlooking the valley, to the spots where you can shoot the Milky Way on a moonless night. Sometimes, the locals say, a light appears in the forest, pale, bluish, moving between the trees. It beckons. It leads somewhere. Nobody knows where. Those who followed it never came back to tell.